For years, Iran has been building. Buried deep within a mountain, it's been creating a new nuclear site that is hidden from view. Hidden, but not as secret as Iran wanted it to be. Now Iran's nuclear Pickaxe Mountain has been exposed, making it the #1 target on Earth for the US and the Trump administration. But the regime believes this mountain is indestructible, that it's buried so deep into the mountain that there is no way that the US can hit it. America responds, "Hold my 30,000-pound bunker-busting bomb." It all started with a threat. As Iran continues to attack shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, and as these attacks have started to enter the Red Sea via the Houthis, and perhaps even the Caspian Sea, US President Donald Trump says that America is looking at one of the biggest targets on the Iranian mainland. Pickaxe Mountain is in America's sights because this mountain is home to a nuclear site buried deep underground. Trump's warning is clear. End the Hormuz blockade, or the US will bring bombs to a pickaxe fight. We'll be hitting that area, probably pretty soon, and there's not a thing they can do about it, Trump said on July 21st as he sat alongside Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun at the White House. Aoun was there to try to secure some sort of stability for his country following months of fighting between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah militant group on his country's territory. Instead, he got a front-row seat to Trump making it clear to the world that this stability will come through firepower. "We follow the material, that's where the action is," Trump declared, before repeating his threat that the US is going to hit Pickaxe Mountain very heavily. Questions abound. Could the US hit this seemingly indestructible site? Would it? Why? But perhaps most importantly, and the question that we'll start with, what is Pickaxe Mountain? On the surface, it appears to be one of the many mountains and hills that dot the Iranian mainland. Certainly not nondescript, but more a landmark than some sort of threatening military site. And that was the case for decades before Iran's regime started building. Today, Pickaxe Mountain isn't just a mountain. It's a sprawling nuclear site that is believed to be one of the most secure facilities in all of the Middle East. Iran has spent years building vast tunnel complexes dozens of meters underground at what CBS News calls an extension of the Natanz nuclear facility that the US hit both during the summer of 2025 and during Operation Epic Fury. But Pickaxe Mountain is shaping out to be far more than a basic extension. This isn't like adding a garage to a 5-bedroom house. Iran has spent the last few years developing this facility into one that has the potential to rival Natanz or any of the other nuclear facilities in Iran in both size and scope. Work started at the site in 2020, following a fire at the Natanz nuclear facility that clued Iran's regime into the importance of having several facilities, each serving as fail-safes for the others. Time magazine reports that this fire that served as the Pickaxe Mountain catalyst was actually an act of sabotage, providing even more incentive for the creation of a new site. After all, if Natanz could be hit once, it could be hit again. The US and Israel went on to prove Iran right in both 2025 and 2026 with bunker-busting bombs. Initially, the tunnels being dug into Pickaxe Mountain were intended to serve as replacements for the above-ground Natanz centrifuge assembly facility that had fallen victim to the fire and claimed sabotage. Again, a smart move by Iran. Take what was once accessible underground and you make it much harder for saboteurs to get to it. The new site is close to Natanz, just 2 kilometers away. As for how deep the site goes, that's another of the big questions. James Acton, who is the co-director of the Nuclear Policy Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, said, "It's a very deep facility. We don't know exactly how deep, but it's very likely at least 100 meters deep." He also adds a worrying warning for the US. There's just no way to destroy this facility. Iran has tried its best to feed into that opinion by erecting defenses around Pickaxe Mountain. Beyond the facility being at least 100 meters underground, the mountain itself is protected by several anti-aircraft batteries. Those batteries are likely still in place. Unlike several of Iran's nuclear sites, Pickaxe Mountain has yet to be touched by US airstrikes, suggesting that the air defenses at the site are still in place. Those defenses could pose a threat to any American bombers that head to Iran's nuclear site. Pickaxe Mountain is also far from small. Satellite photos show multiple entrances into the facility, suggesting that it sprawls across 2.7 square kilometers. But the US has to deal with that size. According to Fortune, Iran intends to use it for much more than storing centrifuges. Due to the scale of the project, Pickaxe Mountain may end up being a site where Iran enriches uranium. This, in theory, could also make it a site where Iran produces a nuclear weapon. The one caveat to all of this is simple. There is no evidence that Iran has started enriching uranium or engaging in any other nuclear activities at Pickaxe Mountain, yet. Trump himself said as much earlier in July, claiming that the US was monitoring the site but could see no evidence of nuclear activity. The Institute for Science and International Security, or ISIS, concurs, as its satellite photos showcase a site that is still under construction, rather than one that is being used in any operational capacity. However, that might be Iran's goal. Though Esmail Baghai, who is the spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry, also claims that there is no nuclear action at the site, ISIS hedges its own bet with the word unclear. It remains unclear when Pickaxe Mountain could be operational. It's also unclear if Iran still plans on installing a large-scale assembly facility, given the destruction of Iran's centrifuge program, including Iran's ability to make centrifuge components needed for an assembly plant, the group says in its assessment. The conclusion: nothing seems to be happening at Pickaxe Mountain right now, but this is an underground base. Whatever lies beneath the mountain is hidden from view, and for all anybody knows, Iran may have started building tunnels from the mountain to Natanz itself. Perhaps there is a transfer of nuclear material happening right now and nobody is the wiser because satellite photos can only pick up what's happening above ground. That may be conjecture on our part, but it's also a possibility. We now have a decent idea of what Pickaxe Mountain is, but questions still remain. Could the US hit the site? And even if it can, would it? We'll dig into the answers to those questions along with exploring what this is really all about in a moment. First, this is a quick reminder that you are watching The Military Show. If you're getting insight from our channel, now is the perfect time to hit subscribe and enable notifications to ensure that you see what we have coming next. So the big question: could the US hit Pickaxe Mountain hard enough to do the level of damage needed to take the site offline? US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth seems to think so. When asked this very question, Hegseth responded, "A lot of our capabilities are classified," before adding, "But if anybody in the world can reach anything on God's green earth, it's the United States military, the most powerful military in the world." Vague is the politest word we can use to describe that statement, as Hegseth offers little in the way of an actual strategy for attacking Pickaxe Mountain. And there's a good reason why the Secretary of War seems cagey. This mountain is a tough nut to crack. Recall Acton's claim that it would be impossible to hit a bunker so deep underground. Acton supplemented that claim by pointing out that the US could attack the entrances and exits to Pickaxe Mountain, which offers a clue to the approach that might be taken. But before that, there is more that makes this nuclear site difficult to take down. DW points out that being buried 100 meters or more underground would mean that Pickaxe Mountain is the deepest of all the facilities that Iran has built so far. That, in turn, would make it much more difficult to damage with the types of airstrikes that the US has conducted against Natanz and other nuclear sites. The US and Hegseth would counter this issue by pointing out that America has bunker-busting bombs. However, whether even the largest and most powerful of those bombs could destroy a facility that is buried as deeply as the one located at Pickaxe Mountain remains to be seen. In theory, it could happen, but for the US to enjoy any success at all, it would need to deploy the biggest of its bunker busters, the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP. Designed specifically for targets like Pickaxe Mountain, this monster of a bomb weighs 13,600 kilograms and is capable of penetrating hardened and buried targets deep underground. The warhead attached to the MOP weighs between 2,082 and 2,600 kilograms, Army Recognition points out. So the US wouldn't be delivering 13,600 kilograms of pure firepower. About a sixth of the MOP actually does the damage, but up to 2,600 kilograms detonating inside an enclosed facility is more than enough to cause severe structural damage. However, it's penetration that really matters here, and that's where the US runs into a challenge. The MOP can penetrate up to 60 meters through rock or reinforced concrete. That's 40 meters short of the Pickaxe Mountain target. If this is the case, then what can the US do to ensure that it takes out the facility? The obvious answer is repeat strikes, relying on the accuracy of the MOP, which has a circular error probable within a few meters, to do the rest of the work. This would be the simplest strategy. Hit Pickaxe Mountain once to penetrate up to 60 meters deep, then hit the exact same spot again to penetrate into the facility itself. The US would need to take care of the air defenses surrounding the facility to make this approach feasible, and there is potential for things to go wrong, Missing the target the second time around would necessitate repeated runs until the US can feel certain that it has hit Iran's underground facility. That's risky and expensive. Each MOP costs millions of dollars, and Iran only needs one air defense unit to score a direct hit to make the strike catastrophic for the US. It would also be difficult to determine just how much damage is done, if any. Pickaxe Mountain site is underground, so it's not exactly easy to assess the damage using satellite photos. But perhaps there is another option. Acton touched on it already. Strike the exits and entrances. ISIS notes that Pickaxe Mountain appears to have two pairs of above-ground entrances that would make obvious targets for the US and its massive bunker busters. The same group also points out that attacks from the past could inform America's approach to Pickaxe Mountain. In several cases, the US has struck ventilation shafts, which are weak points that could allow a weapon like the MOP to penetrate deeper than it otherwise would when hitting the ground. ISIS also points to above-ground power supply lines, which are needed to keep the facility running. So an approach starts to form. Smaller bunker buster bombs could collapse the routes in and out of Pickaxe Mountain, as airstrikes take out the visible power supplies. The ventilation shafts are more of a challenge. Nobody other than Iran has the schematics for the Pickaxe Mountain site. However, America does have schematics for previous sites built by the Armored Nuclear Weapons Program, ISIS points out. Assumptions about construction could be made. And even if the MOPs don't hit the vents, the damage done above ground could be enough to shut the facility down, granting America time to take repeated cracks at getting the job done. Where there's a will, there's a way. Scratch that, where there's a MOP, there's a way. With a theoretical approach in place, we come back to the other big question that we posed earlier. Would the US strike Pickaxe Mountain? Trump has claimed that the mountain is in America's sights, though he has also suggested that the US would strike if the situation in the Strait of Hormuz gets worse. So once again, we come down to the main point of leverage that Iran has in its fight against the US. Blockading Hormuz has been extremely effective for Iran. This single waterway is one of the world's busiest shipping channels, with about 20% of the oil and liquefied natural gas sold around the globe moving through this strait. Blockading the strait has allowed Iran to put pressure on dozens of countries through increased oil prices, which in turn puts pressure on the US to halt its attacks as those affected countries come calling. In a July 24th report, the US Naval Institute said that traffic through the strait remains low, following what was then the 13th straight day of renewed US strikes against Iran. There were just 78 transits between July 13th and 19th, compared to 174 the week before. Still, Trump threatens that Hormuz has to get worse before Pickaxe Mountain is hit. It just got worse. On July 26th, the news broke that an oil tanker had exploded in the Strait of Hormuz after hitting a naval mine that Iran has placed in the waterway to prevent unauthorized transit. Iranian authorities claim that the tanker deviated from the designated navigational route and it paid the price. These routes are taken by tankers that have received permission for transit from Iran, and a burning and broken oil tanker is the surest sign yet that Iran is willing to outright destroy merchant ships that don't follow its rules. As this tanker destruction happened, Iranian proxies in the Red Sea have also started attacking merchant shipping. And now the Caspian Sea may be coming into play. Also on July 26th, Al Jazeera reported that Ukraine had struck an Iranian commercial ship in the Caspian Sea. Iran's regime immediately summoned Ukrainian diplomats over the action, claiming that it was a hostile and criminal act. Ukraine says it's within its rights to attack Iranian merchant vessels due to many of those ships carrying weapons and supplies that Russia uses in its invasion of Ukraine. A powder keg has formed, and the fuse is tiny. A fight between Iran and Ukraine may be about to explode, and it's clear that Iran isn't going to heed Trump's warnings to back away from Hormuz. All of the pieces are in place for a US strike against Pickaxe Mountain now. After everything that has happened in the days since Trump delivered his warning, the US may well be planning that strike as we speak. Still, we can't ignore the fact that most seem to believe that Pickaxe Mountain isn't operational yet. That raises questions about the true value of such a strike for the US as it tries to blunt what it believes to be Iran's burgeoning nuclear capabilities. It's no secret that despite all of the clamor about the Strait of Hormuz, it's Iran's nuclear program that is America's biggest bone of contention. That program hasn't delivered a nuclear weapon. It's unclear if Iran even intends to develop a nuke, or if it's creating enriched uranium to threaten the possibility without following through. And given Iran's long history of engaging in secret nuclear projects, the US can never be quite sure about anything that the country's regime says. Maybe Pickaxe Mountain is operational. Perhaps nukes are being worked on. Those two maybes immediately turn the mountain into a valuable target for the US. On top of that, even if Pickaxe Mountain truly isn't operational yet, it's obvious that Iran intends it to be. It wouldn't be spending so much time and money on building work if it didn't. And for the US, a preemptive strike in the context of taking out the facility before it comes online might hold just as much value as an attack against one of the Iranian nuclear facilities that the US knows for sure is active. The US could also argue that it's done the damage it needs to do to Iran's other nuclear sites. Natanz, which we mentioned earlier, was struck in 2025 and again in March. Isfahan, which is Iran's largest nuclear research complex, was hit by submarine-launched cruise missiles during Operation Midnight Hammer, though there is still enough activity at the site for the US to consider a follow-up strike, the Wall Street Journal reports. Talagan 2 is also being quietly rebuilt following strikes in October 2024 and March 2026. Fordow may be a non-factor. It was a site that the US hit using its ventilation shaft strategy that we suggested may be a possibility for Pickaxe Mountain. There are still above-ground targets at that site though, making it ripe for another strike. So America has options. But when it really comes down to it, Pickaxe Mountain has become the #1 target. If it wasn't, Trump, Hegseth and the administration wouldn't be mentioning it by name. For the US, this may not be about whether the facility is operational or not. Pickaxe Mountain may instead be about the message that will be sent. This is Iran's deepest nuclear facility. If the US is able to hit that facility using its MOPs, Iran learns that even when burrowing so deep underground that it's technically outside of the MOP's range isn't a solution. That could put pressure on Iran to end the Hormuz blockade. At least, that seems to be America's plan. Only time will tell if the US is serious about its Pickaxe Mountain threats. The only thing that's certain is that the one thing Iran has been trying to hide for years has just become the priority target for the United States military. And it may not just be the MOP that the US brings to Pickaxe Mountain. Smaller bunker busters weighing 907 kilograms have already been used against Iran's missile cities, where they've collapsed tunnels and taken out entrances. Could those smaller bombs make an appearance at Pickaxe Mountain? Decide for yourself if they could help the US by watching our video, where we examine their previous use in Iran. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show and enable notifications to keep up with our coverage of the latest developments in the Gulf region. And thank you as always for watching.